Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Earlier on today, I gave you an update on SADC Summit, uh, particularly reference to the summit's discussion of the Zimbabwe election. Many people, including myself, were disappointed to listen to President of Angola, who is the chairperson of SADC, who addressed the other members of the SADC heads of state and government at the beginning of the SADC Summit. And in his address, he said the following, which I think most people took as an indication of what SADC had decided. I read the comment. Allow me to congratulate President Emmerson Mnangagwa of Zimbabwe and His Majesty King Mswati III, King of Mswatini, for the exemplary elections that were recently conducted in your countries, where the tranquility and the orderly manner in which they took place constitute major victory of democracy and a contribution to peace and stability. I think most people read that as this is SADC's position on those elections. Like I said, the summit was called, and on the agenda, people were told were going to be the Zimbabwe elections. And so people assumed that must have been the agreed position of SADC. Other people have since come back, including Ibo Mandasa, and his Twitter was well circulated, and it reads, "It's not over yet. Summit reconvenes physically on Saturday, the 4th of November, specifically to deal inter alia with the Zimbabwe issue. Don't be misled by the courtesies and formalities that accompany such diplomatic meetings." This has since been confirmed by an audio of Zimbabwe's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Fredrik Shava, who has confirmed that the Zimbabwe election was indeed on the agenda, but it was not discussed because the grouping had problems with connectivity. And so it was suggested that they should meet physically this coming Saturday. I think this is a piece of good news because, like I said before, I believe that for SADC to ignore its own report, because remember, SADC election observers did observe the Zimbabwe elections, and they came up with a damning report, which clearly showed that Zimbabwe had failed to hold those elections in accordance with the country's own constitution, its own laws, and had violated the SADC principles and guidelines on elections. And for SADC to just brush that aside would have really sent a wrong message. It's not as if SADC has got a lot of political credibility. It doesn't. I think the organization has made many, many blunders, including some of them, of course, rubber stamping rigged elections. And in Zimbabwe's case, that has been the norm. Other than the 2008 elections, where SADC and the AU stood firm and said those elections were not free, fair, and credible. Before that and thereafter, SADC has rubber stamped rigged elections. And everybody expected the same to happen this year. Fortunately, the team that was sent there looked at the evidence on the ground and must be highly commended for it. But we also know that within SADC, there are parties like ANC of South Africa who said as far back as November last year that they will not allow regime change in Zimbabwe. And we know exactly what they meant by that. If ZANU-PF had rigged the elections, South Africa would have been quite happy to turn a blind eye to it. But now that SADC election observers themselves had come up with a report saying those elections were not free, fair, and credible, I think that had put the cat in the pigeons. Even South Africa itself must have found it very difficult to convince all the other SADC members to ignore their own report condemning those elections. So we are finishing the day on a cheerful note that Zimbabwe rigged elections are still on the SADC agenda. There's been some articles on social media, circulating on social media, saying that the SADC Secretariat has offered ZANU-PF ZANU-PF and Triple C one option, that as a way forward, there should be a national transition authority. The article itself has not given the split. In the past, some people have suggested that there should be a national transition authority composed of 1/3 of the members in that authority, ZANU-PF, another third, Triple C, and the last third technocrats. I would like to reiterate my position on that one. ZANU-PF and Triple C were in the last GNU of 2008-2013 that failed to implement even one meaningful democratic reform. And I find it absolutely ridiculous that these two parties are being asked once again to be in the National Transition Authority. If they fail to implement even one token reform in 5 years of the GNU, what hope is there that they will do much better this time? And after 43 years of rigged elections, I honestly think that the people of Zimbabwe deserve better. We should accept that ZANU-PF does not want reform. ZANU-PF thinks because they are the party that fought in the liberation war, have the divine right to govern the country. And this is why they have rigged elections all these years. And it would be naive on my part to pretend that ZANU-PF, if they do not get their wish, they will make the country ungovernable. But I think it is time that we really made a stand on this issue. We want the democratic reforms to be implemented so that the right of every Zimbabwean to have a meaningful say in the governance of the country is guaranteed. The right that has been denied for these last 43 years. And because of that denial, the country is a failed state whose economy is in total ruins. And the political system in paralysis. We can try to appease ZANU-PF by letting them into the National Transition Authority, but we all know that that body will not be able to deliver all the democratic reforms required to ensure that future elections are free, fair, and credible. After 43 years, I think we need to make a firm stand on that point. The right of every Zimbabwean to a meaningful say should not be negotiable. And we should make it clear by saying to ZANU-PF and Triple C, you are the reason why the country is in this mess. Because they are the reason why the country is in this mess. And if you are part of the problem, if not the problem. And to think that you can be the problem and also be the solution is absurd. SADC itself, I think, will not be able to push that position. This is why I've recommended that SADC should approach the UN and other international bodies for their backing. After all, SADC was the one that was behind the GNU of 2008 to 2013, and it failed to deliver the democratic changes. It is reasonable to say, well, we tried our best and we didn't succeed. We need somebody else to help us move this thing forward. And I think with that level of backing, the UN, for instance, ZANU-PF can be persuaded or must be persuaded to accept the political reality that the 2023 elections were not free, fair, and credible. ZANU-PF is not legitimate. And to move the country forward, we need a National Transition Authority that will implement all the democratic reforms to ensure that future elections are free, fair, and credible. That is not too much to ask. And I think ZANU-PF must be made very clear from the word go that there would be no compromise on that point. The right of every Zimbabwean to a meaningful say in the governance of the country should not be bargained like mangoes at a market. They've been denied this fundamental right all these years. I think we need to stand up and restore that right now. So for tonight, I think the hope is still there that we can have these reforms implemented and the country given a fair chance to have a fresh start and put its house in order. I think that is a positive note. Meanwhile, until Saturday, we have to hammer in that point that the National Transition Authority is the best solution for the country and that it should not be compromised by allowing people who got us into this mess into that arrangement for the sake of appeasing them. After 43 years of rigged elections and appeasing these people, we really need to move on. So on that cheerful note, I'll leave it there. And I'm sure between now and Tuesday, and on Saturday, the issue is very much alive, and I'll update you on any developments. And of course, be issuing discussions to further that point that elections, that the arrangement should not be compromised. It must implement all the democratic reforms and restore the right of every Zimbabwean to a meaningful say in the governance of the country. That no one is above the law. That ZANU-PF should not be allowed to hold the nation to ransom anymore. That is my message for the night. Thank you very much for listening, and good night.